guys, I'm Danielle and I'm here today at Southern Distilling Company in Statesville, North Carolina. So today we are going to be tasting the double shot of bourbon cream liqueur, the Southern Star with Southern Distilling Company. So it's very good, very creamy, probably something you could put in your coffee. Would go really well with coffee, eggnog, something like that.
Join our Patreon for more beautiful hosts. Patreon.com/whiskeyscapades.
So we're owned and operated by a married couple, Pete and Anna Barger. Neither one of them come from any sort of like moonshine or whiskey heritage. They're just both really passionate about bourbon. Pete's actually a process engineer, so he's built and designed facilities like what we have all over, and his wife's actually coming from a healthcare and social work background.
Okay.
Pete's from this area, North Iredell County. Vienna's actually from Southern California. Legend has they met in the parking lot of a Grateful Dead concert a couple decades ago and started hanging out and never really stopped. But at any rate, they moved out this way, started their family. They kind of got tired of their their first act. They wanted to kind of start a new act. And they purchased this property back in 2014. And at the time, it was just 4 metal walls and a dirt floor. So they built this place from the ground up, really with the vision of creating a world-class craft distillery. North Carolina is not super friendly towards spirituous liquor. They really like their wine. They really like their craft beer. Distilleries, not so much. So it was actually several years before all the permitting and legalities and all the infrastructure was completed, and they were actually able to start running production. So we didn't start running production until 2017. Now, what they were doing kind of in the meantime was like history about distillation, particularly here in this area. Now, in my real life, I'm actually a middle school social studies teacher, and so if I'm boring people about the history, feel free to cut it. But they found that the very first recorded still in North Carolina was set up right here in Statesville, and that was back in 1750 by an Irish immigrant named Fergus Sloan.
That's pretty interesting,
yeah,
actually.
He put his pot and kettle still pretty much right behind where the football field is at Statesville High School today, introducing distillation to this area. Now, back then, pretty much everyone was a farmer, and he quickly showed all those farmers that that's how you're going to make profit off your excess grains. Once you turn it into a bottle of liquor, it's going to last forever, and it's going to be worth a lot more in that bottle than it would be as a sack of raw grain. So really, Statesville can all be traced back to his original donation of land to his church. At the time, it was called Fourth Creek Congregation. It's now First Presbyterian Church. So their meeting house, their graveyard, it's actually the heart of downtown Statesville. And so the community itself kind of grew up around the church. So back then, the church really was the center of the community. Liquor very quickly kind of became the bread and butter of our local economy. By the 1850 census, we reported about 15,000 total residents in this county, and on that same census, we reported 226 still houses. And those are just the ones we would report to the government.
Right.
If everyone's a farmer, everyone had a still out back. By the 1880s, we'd become the intersection of 2 major rail lines. So as folks were heading south by rail towards Atlanta, they had to come through Statesville. If they were heading out west towards Asheville, we were kind of considered end of the line, so we became a huge distribution hub for over 400 different distilleries in the area. We were shipping out pretty much more legally produced alcohol than anywhere else on the planet at that time. Our local newspaper got a hold of that story, and they kind of christened us the liquor capital of the world, which the late 1880s, though, that put a huge target on our back. Because at the same time, all these new laws are getting passed to limit the production and consumption of alcohol, and ultimately that's going to be what's leading to prohibition nationwide. Statesville goes dry in 1903, North Carolina goes dry 10 years before federal prohibition. After the repeal of prohibition, we become an ABC state, so that means each county votes on whether or not we're wet or dry. We still have dry counties to this day. This was a dry county until the 70s. Our first ABC store, the windows were papered over so you couldn't see who was inside or what was inside. If you bought a bottle of liquor, you went out the back door. You didn't really want to be seen carrying a bottle of liquor in this town. Even after all of that, 1986 is when you can finally buy a cocktail in this county in a restaurant. No respectable restaurant would ever put liquor on their menu. And then even fast forward to 2023, we still kind of have some backwards attitudes towards liquor. The Statesville City Commissioners, they passed a 2-block social district where you can have an open container, and people in the Facebook comment section were kind of saying, this is the moral decay of this town, and who needs to drink that bad, and think of the children.
Yes.
And the school I teach at is actually within the social district, and so we actually have a little sticker on our window that says no open containers in our establishment.
But that's understandable for that area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I get that.
So Our still is actually the first legal still in this county in over 100 years. There have been plenty of illegal ones. Obviously, those are a lot harder to keep track of. And our focus is on the production of bourbon whiskey. All bourbon is whiskey, not all whiskey is bourbon. For bourbon to be bourbon, you just gotta know your ABCs. A is for America, must be produced in the United States if you're gonna be able to call it a bourbon. B is for barrel. You have to use a brand new charred white American oak barrel every single time. If you reuse a barrel, whatever comes out of that cannot be labeled as bourbon. And then C is for corn. Bourbon is a corn-based distillate, has to be minimum 51% or more corn if you're gonna be able to call it bourbon. So we're going to go into the production facility and just kind of walk you through the different steps of how we turn grain into bourbon.
Oh, it's hot though. You want to get an idea of just how large these tanks are. These are approximately 5,000 gallons. It takes at least 2 cooks to fill one of these 5,000 gallon firms. A cook cycle takes approximately 4 hours to complete. But up here we're dealing with fermentation, and just like when you use yeast at home, you can warm it up and wake it up, but if it's too hot, you're going to kill it all. As you can tell, it's pretty warm up here. Fermentation is also exothermic. That means it's releasing this one's kind of sort of and not a whole lot of chemicals involved in this one. But you can put your hand on this simple jack. So the Goldilocks range for our strain temperature is about 85 to 90 degrees. If it's getting hotter than that, we'll circulate cold water around these simple jacks to kind of keep things in equilibrium. You'll notice this kind of looks like corn bread. The fermentation also releases carbon dioxide, that's what that bubbling is. As fermentation slows down, we get less and less movement on the surface. And those grains have gotten pushed up at the top, they kind of can heal, like you've ever left a bundle of stock of cornflakes sitting out on the counter too long. Yeah. So, absolutely. So we can't send it to the still when it has this hard, chunky crust on top. Once it's done fermenting, it's done with raise up the train garlic, kind of creates the bad, like almost like a merged place. And our fermentation is going to have to be drained from the bottom, and then it gets sent up to our air press. That's what we're going to have to take that into to make sure it's the right consistency, that we don't get clogged or it's about 6.5 to 3 day turnaround time from when we mill it until we're actually ready to distill it. On a good day, we make without spell, alcohol by volume, it's about strong homemade wine that you use to give it a fruit. And that's the whole reason why we use still. Still is when you strip and isolate the alcohol from spread. Let's try to find a firm that is a little bit more active. Alright, so there's some more activity. Yeah, there's a little bit more activity on this one. Usually when it's brand new, it'll look like it's almost out of propylene oil. Obviously, if it were that hot though, that would obliterate or and there goes our alcohol. So from the beer well, we're going to be sending our fermented mash to our still. Now, this will probably be our primary. Other than our bar that our original goes to the top, it's right down that column. Under great. Go after that, it's time to take down the column. If it was made from this hot, 5 months. When that hot food eats alcohol test, stop the base fire. Yeah. And again, I decided to start the test. Run off the surface. That's the stop. And I'm going to one side. Type of alcohol. And it's going to saute. So the whole that top wine back in that good first first off, like I said, you might have to get about 12 inches of alcohol. You just got to stand up. About 500 gallons of the good stuff, and that will blend through and add to our 50-gallon barrels. So an average pour can get anywhere between 11 to 14 barrels, depending on how efficient you are, how much water we're adding to it. Glass distillery, what that means is every step of production happens here. We receive everything as a whole grain, and we're mill it, cook it, ferment it, distill it, barrel it, age it, all right here. We receive everything as a whole grain. If you look at the base of any one of those silos, you can see that clear cast of bin, you see how good grains. On average, today we'll go through about 50,000 pounds of grain. Sounds like a really big number, but compared to a lot of other national labels, this very much is still being trapped up in distillery. Once we're ready to use grains and auger, we move them from the silo into the mill room where we're going to crush those grains. The goal is to kind of get it like a grits-like consistency, so with a wide surface area. So that way, during fermentation, those yeasts and those enzymes that we're adding just can access those sugars a little bit more easily. So in here, let's kind of see some example bottles of what our grain starts off at. So here we're making our mash bills with typically 3 of 4 grains. So making bourbon, obviously corn is going to be the primary grain going into that. Then we're going to be either using wheat or rye. And then we always put a little bit of malt barley in everything we do. Because when you have malt in that grain, that actually increases your enzyme that kind of helps start that fermentation process. So grains start off looking like this. You probably see the kernels before. It's coming out of the mill looking like this. Inside the mill, there are 2 rollers that exert about 600 pounds of pressure to really crush that grain. That is the mill back there. And if you look right above us, there's that pipe down there. We carry those little grains to our food. Now, if you've ever heard about like moonshine making you go blind, this bad stuff is a lot like acid from nail polish. Like it's a hard boil and egg in industrial strength acetone. It's just got the membrane in your eye and the membrane in your egg. So if you're an old timer out in the woods, you don't have all these fancy sensors separating the good from the bad, and you're out in the woods drinking nail polish for 40 years, you're gonna get your infection. You're interested in trying? Okay, this little bit probably won't make you go blind, but if you want to just drink from England, you're going to feel that it's very green, very viscous. If you look at the tank, you're going to notice one thing coloration. Those vortexes when you make up a lot more sediment. And then compared to the good stuff.
You can see that through.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And so this is really tastes the grains coming through, but it tastes like grain alcohol.
Right.
This is bourbon before we call it bourbon though, not inside a barrel.
Right.
You'll notice it's coming out clear. Bourbon is not a clear liquor. The reason why it's brown is the starch is inside those barrels.
That's right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And really where most of the flavor is coming from too. We're not adding in caramel flavor, apple or vanilla spice. Like we're not adding that. That all has to be occurring from the caramelization of the sugars that are present in it. Just like you caramelize an onion or glazing a marshmallow, that tar is just a flavor. So when we fill our barrels, this is pretty much what's going in. The water adds to it, and we store barrels in an unclimate controlled environment. As temperatures fluctuate, this is going to form and it'll expand in the jar. When it's cold, and it will track what the way out of the jar. So all the color and most of the flavor comes from that in the process. Now, once you've got to the good stuff, you take it and send it to the processing room where we get it ready to go inside the barrel. We have our processing room. This is strictly RTP purified water that's undergone reverse osmosis. That strips out all the minerals and taste of that water. And that's what we're putting on this distillate. When it's coming off the still, it's usually about 130, about 135 proof. And when we're barreling, we stick to about 110 as our ideal entry room. Now, the more water you add, the volume we create, the more barrels we're going to be able to fill. At a minimum, our stuff all carries that straight bourbon, whiskey labeling. That requires minimum 2 years age. Most of our stuff goes between 4 and 6 years. You want to add water now because the alcohol is going to evaporate a lot faster than that water. What evaporates out is going to be the share, is protected bourbon, very long one. After 1 year in the barrel, it's technically about 10% volume. Beyond that, it's kind of a sliding scale, about 7 to 5%, depending on the sweet flavor. Once barrels get filled, we stage them and get a box barrel that we load them up and maybe throw them across the room. Those good red barns, those are our rig houses. That's for these 4 barrels. But once you head out that way, step out to the loading dock. It smells a lot like a farm out here on the loading dock. That's because the trucks are working farm trucks. About 70% of our grains come within 40 miles of this distillery. We're trying to keep things as local as possible. So the same farmers we get our grains from, we get back to before done. For us, it's a waste product. For them, that makes an excellent fertilizer or a high protein animal feed. You don't have to worry about like drunk cows tipping over in the field. We've gotten all the alcohol off it. This black book is all the spent mass stuff is filled. Right into that tank. Our farmers usually come about twice a day to swap out the books. So we're standing in the original warehouse. The conditions in here are very similar to the rig houses that you're going to see across the field in a minute. Essentially, this is a giant metal shed. When it's hot outside, it's going to be hot in here. When it's cold outside, it's going to be cold in here. So day to day, your conditions vary, season to season, year to year. And you don't really ever know what you're going to get. There's not science behind aging them, and if science can replicate flawlessly, you'd be putting out the perfect single barrels every single time. You'd put everybody out of business. There are just too many variables that go into what that thing is doing. If you look at any one of these barrels, you notice that all those staves are different widths. If you're a miller, you're running planks of wood that you're saw, you're not going to stop and recalibrate the width after every single cup. So the odds that only one tree produce all of those staves, virtually impossible. More likely than not, if you get a tree represented in one of those staves, and even if you're harvesting off the same lot, you're not going to get identical growing conditions, aging those trees, no density. Then you're lighting a fire inside. No two fires will burn the same. And then you're putting it in this giant metal shed. And so what time of year you put it in, where you store it, how long you age it, every barrel is going to come out tasting different. So we have to sample and grade barrels along the way to kind of decide which ones we're going to blend, because we as the consumer expect it to taste the same every single time. If you see things like a single barrel, that means that that one barrel is good enough all on its own. Never replicate that flavor ever again. That's set aside. Now in the original warehouse, we're going to see a combination of that traditional sideways storage method. As a history teacher, I can tell you why that's the traditional way. A couple hundred years ago, the easiest way to move a heavy round object would be to roll it. Now we have forklifts now, so it's a lot less labor intensive to do that more modern palletized storage. So in our rig houses across the field, we only do palletized storage. It's 4 barrels on a pallet. They're stacked 8 pallets high at high school. Once we're ready to either blend and bottle our releases or set aside and bottle little single barrels, we dump them, and then in that back chamber is our bottling line, and that's where we fill our bottles and get ready. Check that out for consumers. We can't take regular groups to bottle one. It's also a contract distiller. We work with over 100 different clients. Some make very large labels that just want distillate, and they will ferment and barrel it and age it for their conditions. Some folks are trying to open their own distillery, but they legally can't produce anything, so they give us their mash bill, we make it, we start aging it, so they hope that's what they sell. And some of our clients just want a private label without the overhead of other distillery. In the
he had a son, Trinity, he's making an art installation right now. So this is our event center. Right now, our owner Pete has a lot of his classic car collection stored in here. But we do private corporate events and parties, and then also holiday parties that are open to the public, where we can showcase the space. It can comfortably seat about 300 people, and we can utilize these garage bays for indoor, outdoor seating. It does have a caterer's kitchen, men's rooms, women's rooms back there, retail gift shop area, and upstairs, which we'll check out here in a minute. That's where we can take VIP clients, and our owner Pete will kind of hang out up there with them, and we do our barrel pick program here too. So when we have clubs, we usually present anywhere between 3 to 6 barrels for them to taste, and we set them up right here, and they kind of do their blind tasting. And that club or that ABC board, they kind of have first crack at purchasing that barrel content, and we can print custom labels that bear the name of that board or that club, and then we can also retail those bottles out with their literal seal of approval on those bottles.
Well, I don't know if that was originally this was going to be utilized for weddings too. But getting kind of revisit that. We did do one wedding here. It was for our lead chemist Sam. So that was actually the first event that we hosted in here. And they basically said, yeah, we're not going to do weddings again. So they really want this to be a space that accentuates the distillery experience.
Right.
The bridal suite is air conditioned. Well, the corner of the bridal suite.
Oh, that's a beautiful bridal suite.
Yes. So this is where he can entertain his clients. Yeah. So they did a fantastic job with it. And when we go back downstairs, you notice kind of like the chair rail that goes around the entire perimeter of the dance floor. It's all out of barrel staves in the basket pattern from all angles.
Yeah, this is.
From a general store down the road, so they're both over 100 years old. Have a mini donkey drink bourbon, and kind of making it more of a destination, and making it where this is more than a place that you can just drink, but in case come around, we are too friendly. They don't really care too much about food, but they drink on food. You can. We always conclude with the tasting. That's kind of your reward for kind of trekking through the facility. It's pretty warm outside. I always like to start my tastings with our double rye whiskey. It's 2 different rye whiskeys that have been aged separately, then blended and aged a second time in a used bourbon barrel. So think about like what you know about like rye bread. It's kind of peppery, a little bit spicy. When you dump a bourbon barrel, you don't get every drop of bourbon out. What's actually left behind in that char, in that wood, is actually known as the devil's cut or the devil's dew. And that's why so many products get finished in used bourbon barrels. So that secondary aging really does sweeten it up, mellows it out. It's not as harsh and bitey as you would expect a rye. I think this comes across a lot more citrus forward, a little bit more herbal. It's good whiskey for a good cause too, so we are partnered with Purple Heart Homes on this product. So 50% of every bottle's profit goes to that organization, and what they do is custom builds and remodels so that wounded veterans can stay in their homes and not have to go to assisted living. So this last Christmas, Pete and Deanna got them a $50,000 check, so it's good whiskey for a good cause. This next product is our Hunting Creek Rye Whiskey. If you look at the woman on the label, that's actually a digital composite sketch of our owner Vienna and their 2 daughters, Seattle and Lily. That's their hunting dog Scout. Hunting Creek is actually one of the natural boundaries of Iredell County. As you're driving up 77 north, you can see that little sign that says Hunting Creek. So Statesville is the home to several whiskey distilleries that existed before Prohibition. Pete and Vienna have purchased a number of those historic brand names and mash bills and are in the process of bringing them back. So this is kind of the first entry in our Legend series. It's the same mash bill that was produced way back when. It's a 51 rye, 39 corn, 10% malted barley. This one does have more of that kind of traditional pop, that pepper on the sides of the tongue. I think up front on the nose, there's a lot more kind of like maple and almond sweet. And then on the back, kind of like a little bit of that minty spice. This one right here is our standard high rye bourbon. Now, for bourbon to be bourbon, it has to be more corn than anything else. So rye bourbon just means rye is the next highest ingredient in that mash bill. So this is a 60 corn, 36 rye, 4% malted barley. So a really good balance of that sweet from that corn, with that pepper and spice from the rye. This typically goes about 5 to 6 years in that barrel. So there's a lot of nice earthy, oaky smoke coming through. This one, hands down, is my favorite out of everything we're making right now. 90 proof. I kind of refer to it as my daily drinker. Not that I have a problem, but I teach 7th and 8th graders, and I always say, I hit the bottle because I can't hit the kids.
Understandable these days.
This one right here is our Paragon mash bill, so that's our wheat mash bill. So it's a 70 corn, 16 wheat, 14 malted barley. We're focusing more on this product, which is the bottle and bond. Very few distillers can actually put bottle and bond on their label, so you have to be in compliance to a pre-prohibition law from 1897. It's literally the Wild West. There are no laws that regulate the safety of any sort of consumer product. Think about any Western you've seen where you go through the spittoon, like there's the spittoon over there and the doors, and there's that jug with the 3 X's behind the bar. Well, what's in that jug? It could be anything. Rubbing alcohol dyed brown with horse manure or shoe polish. So bottle and bond means what we say is in this bottle is guaranteed by the government. Obviously, nowadays, we don't have to worry about those safety issues. So more, it's kind of a testament to what we do here. So for it to be bottle and bond, it has to be 100% all in-house. So it cannot be here until it's a finished product. We're a grains glass distillery to check. Storing your barrels in a federally bonded warehouse, which means we're inspected, we pay our taxes. Random people off the street can't get in there and tamper with what's in it. It has to be a minimum of 4 years old. All the barrels in this blend have been filled within 6 months of one another, so it's not only as old as we say it is, but also ensures that it's all grains for the same growing season. It also has to be exactly 100 proof. So with this one, I think you've got a lot of that kind of baking spice, kind of tastes like pecan pie or black walnut. You get a little bit of that cinnamon, a little bit of vanilla coming through on that one. And think about like wheat bread versus rye bread. You can expect it to be a little bit softer, a little bit sweeter, almost kind of nutty. Wheat will also kind of present more like heat, kind of at the tongue and more so in the chest. And then we always end our tastings with our double shot bourbon cream. This is hands down the best selling product that we have here. A lot of times people get dragged to bourbon tastings against their will. And they kind of suffer through it, and this is the one product that they're going to enjoy. It's only 30 proof, so that's 15% alcohol. So think of it like red wine. You have to consume it like you consume red wine uninebriated. So if you put an ounce in your morning coffee, that is 1/6 of a glass of wine. Nobody's going to know. So it goes great in your morning coffee. Also, a lot of people just like it on the rocks, or kind of mixed with a little bit of honey, a little bit of bourbon. Put it in your freezer, frost up, tastes like kind of Wings Frosty. Put it in your Dr. Pepper, your root beer, kind of tastes like root beer.
Eggnog, absolutely.
Eggnog milkshakes, absolutely.